Welcome to the Property Renovation Podcast with your host, James Woodham, giving you the best tips on achieving the perfect renovation whilst making it as fun, safe and as cost-effective as possible by hearing from experts in the industry and people that have been through the experience themselves. Let me introduce your host, 3 times award winner of leading renovation website House and over 15 years in the industry, renovating just over 200 properties, James Woodham.
Hello and welcome back to the Property Renovation Podcast. My name's James Woodham, and on this episode we're going to be introducing you to Serene. Serene is a homeowner that constructed a summer house at the back of her garden and uses it as a yoga retreat, a yoga space and a place to work in a peaceful space. But just before I introduce you to Serene, don't forget you can share us on iTunes and Stitcher. Don't forget to leave a review. The more reviews, hopefully the more listeners, the better we grow and the more we can educate homeowners. Why don't you come into our community on Facebook, which is facebook.com/groups/the Property Renovation Podcast. And without further ado, I'll introduce you to Serene. So, Serene, welcome to the Property Renovation Podcast. I really appreciate you coming on, wanting to talk about your project. And I'm glad I got you on, actually, because I saw what you've done in the back of your garden with this summer house, and I thought it was quite fantastic. So thank you for coming on and wanting to talk about it. We've got a series of questions, so we can go through them and hear what you've got to say. So how long was you planning to renovate, like before you committed to the project itself? How long was you were planning for it?
For about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was in the pipeline for about 2 years because I saw the back of my garden. It was unused space, and I used to put junk at the back of my garden.
Yeah.
And it was blocked by a humongous tree, so it was never used, and it was like a site that couldn't stand. And it was in the pipeline for a long time, and I had to get the money and get my head around it, and also I had to consult the feng shui, so it had to be done at the right time in the right year.
Okay. And was it your idea or was it like a joint idea?
No, it's my idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Great. And like, what was the first steps? Talk about like the I don't know, like with the modelling process. Did you speak to any architects or designers or any other professionals about doing this and going on this journey?
So I spoke to somebody that had friends who were electricians.
Okay.
And also a landscaper, just to see what was feasible. And I sort of did a bit of groundwork into planning permissions and what was possible to do without needing a planning permission.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What did you have to achieve or not do to avoid going through the planning permission process?
So there's a planning portal on the British government planning portal site, and it's very specific about how much of your garden you could set aside for a outhouse, they would call.
Right.
And I think it's a certain percentage of your garden. You can only use up to a certain percentage. And also there were specific dimensions on how high and how big the outhouse could be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it had to be lower than 2.5 meters.
Okay.
And I think takes up less than 50% of your garden space.
Right. And did you know that before you started planning it, or is it something that you stumbled across that you had to do or discover?
No, I just did a bit of research, Google, and all the information was very clear on the planning portal website.
Yeah, it's quite helpful on there.
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good. And I know it was your idea. So, what was the purpose of doing it? Like, what did you want to gain out of it?
So I wanted to maximize the garden space. I wanted to utilize the extra 3 meters in my garden that I never got to use. I mean, it was literally dumping ground for the bins, and it was a tree and nothing grew, and all my grass in my garden didn't grow because of that. I had a massive bay tree that was about 5 meters tall. So it was taller than my house. So my garden was suffering because of the tree. Right. So I decided I wanted to have an extra room, possibly use it as a yoga studio.
Okay.
So I just wanted a big open space with an ensuite and a smaller storage space.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So other than the planning portal, how much other research did you do? Like talk about choosing products and making it your own.
So I got someone in initially to just have a look. We worked through how feasible it was to get plumbing, mains into the outhouse, to get it electrified, if I can say that. So to get electricity into the outhouse, and decided I would save a couple of thousands if I didn't have a full-on ensuite or electricity, but it was worth it. It's worth doing the full works, really.
Good.
So, yeah.
Good. And as part of the research, did you already have like a figure in mind, a budget that you wanted to spend?
Yes. Yes. So I set aside, I thought it was going to be about 12 to 13,000 pounds.
Okay.
But it was nearly double that figure, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to see if you went over it. Okay. And what was the key factors about going over it? What areas did you go over that you didn't think you would?
So I got a couple of quotes from a couple of builders. Mm-hmm. So the cheapest way to have done it would have to be to build it out of wood.
Okay.
And which would be very much a temporary structure, and that would have been considerably less.
Right.
But then I decided I want to weatherproof the whole thing so that I could be in it throughout the whole year, winter and summer. And also I didn't want to have any problems in the long run. Mm-hmm. So the most expensive quote was to build it with concrete blocks, breeze blocks, that was thermal insulated. Okay. So that bumped everything up by £4,000. And then I decided to go for really good doors, and also the ensuite just bumped everything up as well, and all the little fittings. I didn't want to save money on fittings and stuff like that. So I did a lot of the work, the finishing work myself, but it was still, materials are just extremely expensive at the moment.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it sounds like when you were going through the whole thought process and wanting to do this, you wanted to do it right and you wanted it to last.
Yes.
And I think that was the key factor, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was going to be something that I wanted to be able to use or live in or rent out. Mm-hmm. I didn't really know what the end product was going to be for. I didn't, but I knew that I needed it to be fully functioning throughout the entire year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. What was the best thing that happened in the renovation? If you could think of one really good thing that happened.
The best thing that happened was my friend she bought a house and she ripped up all the old floorboards in the property she bought.
Okay.
So I managed to salvage all those floorboards, which saved me about £400.
Wow.
Which is not a lot in a grand scheme of things, but it looks amazing because we saved it, we sanded it down, we finished it off, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, and you feel good about recycling something as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk about the building companies. Was it difficult to find them? How did you go through that process of finding a suitable building company to do the work?
Again, it was my friend who was already doing renovations, and she had a company that she used quite a lot, and they were based in the area I live in, which is East London. Mm-hmm. So he came out and gave me a quote, and I sort of was convinced to go with him, even though he was the most expensive, because when he spoke about it, it just gave me a great sense of confidence that he knew what he was doing. Because, I didn't have any very thorough drawings. It was very organic process, the way I sort of designed the thing. I sort of knew how big and how tall I wanted it. I knew the footprint. I knew where the door was going to be. And I knew I wanted a flat roof with a skylight. And I knew the size of the shed, the storage space, and the bathroom. So I say, this is like the rough footprint, and we're just going to build organically, basically, without a drawing.
Good. And when they gave you the quotation, did they go over what they said, like without letting you know, or was there like a lot of discussion and a lot of talking through the whole process?
There was a lot of discussion, talking through. He gave me a quote, and he says it's not going to go over this quote. It included everything except the fittings, which, because I says I want to choose the fittings and I want to do the finishing myself, and those costs I will incur myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. What was your experience like working with the building company itself? I mean, you've already said this, it was a friend, but could you just talk about that? Maybe it could help people.
Right. So you would need to be on site quite a lot. If you're not going to have any specific drawings, then you need to be able to communicate with the builder what you want, because what you think in your head is not what they can see, what you want. So it's a daily process where you have to like be here, talk to them, tell them what you want, or else it's going to go terribly wrong, because what Mr. A is going to think and what you're going to think is completely different. Yep. So and then I'm quite particular about little details, how things finish and how things look. So I had to be available every single day and sort of supervise the build from beginning to the end. And we did run into some problems, which is the guy that was left by the head of the company to do the build, he was just extremely slow. So the project was meant to finish or complete in 5 weeks.
Okay.
But it went on for about 8 weeks. So my house was turned into a building site itself, because they left all their tools and building materials in my main house. And instead of living on a building site for 6 weeks, I lived on a building site for more than 8 weeks.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So what was the communication part? Like, how did you speak to the owner of the building company about that? How did you handle that situation?
When it came up to like the 7th week, I was pretty fed up that it was going extremely slowly, because, as building companies go, they probably have a few jobs on the go at the same time. So some days they won't turn up because they'll be doing another job, and they won't communicate that with me.
Yeah.
So I would be like, where are you? Like, this job needs to finish. So in the end, I said, this is the deadline. I need everything out by this day. I just don't want to see your face. I don't want to see the tools anymore.
Bit of tough action there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Or else they would just drag it on forever.
My next question is about, did you manage the project yourself? And I think it was quite obvious you did.
Yes, I did.
But,
yeah.
And was it because you wanted to take ownership? I feel that's what you wanted to do. And but how about the flexibility, like making yourself flexible and available to be on site all the time? How did you handle that situation?
Well, because I work quite close to work, so if needed, I would come home, sort of supervise the thing, go back to work. But you need to be by your phone, because they would call and ask random questions, and you needed to be able to provide that. I mean, an example was, so we're going to do this bit and this bit and this bit. So this would take 1 week. This would take 2 weeks. And then suddenly they go, we need the doors now. And you're well, but the doors take 8 weeks to sort of arrive, because you sort of measure the opening and you order the doors, so I've got these amazing bifolding doors. They open all the way.
Oh, wow.
And they were custom made to fit the opening of the hole in the summerhouse, if I call it that.
Yeah.
So these custom made doors takes about 6 to 8 weeks. So I say, well, it's just not going to happen. And then, so things, basically the time scales of things sort of didn't match up with the timescales of things arriving. The next one was the skylight. I had a bespoke skylight made. So it's a massive piece of glass that's set on top of my roof.
Right.
And that was 2 meters by 1 meter, very big. And they were doing the roof. And then when we need the box frame for the skylight, I'm like, well, that's not going to arrive till a week later. So, there was delays on my part, but also it wasn't communicated to me in advance that they needed these things now, there and then, or on this particular date. So they were working organically, and so was I.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was no schedule, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I think in a proper building site, there would be a project manager and there would be a proper schedule when things need to be on site and, put in place.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. Like, if someone else is listening and they're thinking about doing a project like this, where it does require a lot of attention to detail and a lot of involvement, so that you get it just how you want it, but you weren't available, or they wouldn't be available, and they have to be at work. Do you think hiring a project manager would be a good idea for something?
Oh,
like
yeah.
this?
I would say definitely. I mean, my background is in design anyway, so I've worked extensively on interior projects myself. So I know that I can sort of manage it myself. Mm-hmm. But if you're not experienced in building or in ordering stuff or liaising with a building company, then I would say definitely get someone on board that can do the drawings, that understands design, that can project manage and liaise with the builders.
Great. Okay. What was the biggest challenge that you faced during the project?
The biggest challenge was to get it finished within the time frame, really, because I had a vision, and the vision sort of grew throughout the weeks, and I knew that the build was sort of stretched. So it went from, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And then on top of that, I had to finish the build myself. So it went up to about 10 weeks altogether.
Gosh.
Yeah, and then when the build was finished, I sort of had to sort out my main house because the floors in my house were quite badly scratched from all the building materials being dragged in and out, in and out.
Okay. I mean, with dealing with it yourself and going from the beginning to the end, would you say that, because people say that you go through a phase, you go through excited to then when it starts, it's like really hesitant in like, you're feeling a bit worried about it, and then there's so it's like a roller coaster. But so you went through a lot of that.
Oh yeah, I mean when they demolished my old outhouse, I was like, oh my God, is this the right thing I'm doing? Or have I made a mistake in chopping down that massive bay tree that housed all the amazing birds living there?
Right.
And then it went from, oh my God, when they started to lay the first brick, and then you could see the structure and the skeleton of the summer house going up. That was so exciting because it transformed. I could step in there. Even without the roof, I could sense, the space and how that space was going to be so user friendly. But then the project just, I think things move quite quickly at first.
Yeah.
And then it starts to slow down because it's like tiny details. You need the gutter, you need the roof, you need this and you need that. And then some things take much longer than others because you have to wait for a contractor that was the plumber or the contractor that was the electrician. Mm-hmm. So there was always a waiting period, and that made you a little bit anxious because you just wanted it to move and you wanted it to be over so that you can sort of do the finishing, like the painting of the inside of the walls. I wanted to do like a special lime wash finish. And so, the waiting for it to be completed, for the builders to be gone so I can finish the project, that took so long and it felt like eternity. Yep, and I just wanted it to be done so I can get my life back
on track.
Yeah, because my flatmates and I were all living on a building site. It was always cold in the house because we had the back door to the garden open throughout the whole winter. Yeah, and it was raining a little bit, so the house was always a bit muddy. So it was quite painful.
Yeah,
but it was worth it, definitely.
Yeah. Good. What was your favourite element of the finished project? Like, what is your favourite element of the finished project and why?
So I did a bit of research into the cladding of my summer house, and I decided to go for a cedar cladding, but I charred it. So it's like an old Japanese method where you torch the cladding, so it sort of becomes really black and sooty. Okay. And that itself is like a self-preserving method to preserve the wood.
Wow.
So the whole exterior of the summer house is black, but you can still see the veins of the cedar wood that I used. And it's extremely beautiful because it's very matte, so it doesn't look painted, it just looks burnt.
Sounds
but
beautiful.
It's extremely beautiful and extremely organic, and it sits so beautifully at the back of the garden.
Good, and you can sit back on a summer's evening and thinking it was all worth it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sitting out here in the garden now, and, when we first finished the project, I mean, me and my flatmates, we couldn't stop standing in the house just looking back out in the garden going, oh my God, it's the sexiest thing ever.
Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
The only thing I would have done differently is I would have sort of built maybe the bifolding door slightly different so I get a bit more ventilation. This summer house is built so well, it's so airtight that right now we've got a heat wave in London, so it's 34 degrees. When I'm sitting in there, I can't do yoga because it's so hot. And with the skylight, it's like a greenhouse, so it gets so hot in the daytime, so you can hardly breathe. So the only way to be in there is to open all the doors to allow some kind of draft to come through the garden.
Nah.
Yeah, so it needs to have some proper ventilation. And the second thing I would have done differently is I would have hidden the gutters behind the cladding. So right now you can actually see the gutter in front of the house. It's black, so It's not like, it doesn't pop up if you're not looking at it, but because I know it's there, so I see it, very much. So it's a design flaw on my side.
Right. Okay, and last question. Your best tip for a renovation, for a beginner that's going to go in and do a renovation, what's the best tip you could offer?
For a beginner, I would definitely get a professional on board as well. Because if you're a beginner, you've never done this before. It's like a minefield of things that you need. You might be able to write a list down, but then a professional would be able to sort of put it down on paper, do a schedule for you and plan everything for you. Because there are so many things that you need to think about, especially when it comes to finishes. And if you're not sort of experienced in this area, then I would say it's actually quite difficult.
All right, good. That was really good. Serene, thank you very much for coming on the Property Renovation Podcast. I'm sure that will really help a lot of people. So, and enjoy the rest of the summer in your summer house.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.